AITA for removing tree roots from my yard. My family and I moved into a new home this spring. We had previously lived in apartments and we now have our first yard for our kids to play in. The neighborhood we moved into has a lot of mature trees. And this being the first time I've had to do my own yard work, there has been a learning curve. One of my neighbor's yard is separated from ours by a chain link fence. There is a large tree just on their side of the fence. Some roots from the tree spread into my yard and some of them are growing on the surface of the ground. They are visible and are above the ground quite a bit. About a month ago, my kids were running around and playing and my daughter tripped on one of the roots, fell, and ended up breaking her wrist trying to catch herself. Of course, this was very upsetting to my wife and I, and she pretty much told me to do something about the roots so this didn't happen again. So, I bought some tools and started tearing the roots up as best I could. I got them out to a point that nothing is sticking above the ground anymore and filled the top in with fresh soil and grass seed. My neighbor must have noticed the work I did because he made a comment about the fresh soil. I told him I had to remove some roots since my daughter tripped on one. He asked what I meant by remove, and I told him I dug a bunch out and cut them out as best I could. He got pissed and told me I probably killed his tree. I told him that removing a few roots isn't going to hurt a tree that big and they were creating a tripping hazard. And since they were in my yard, I did what I needed to do to remove them. He told me there are other ways to deal with roots like that instead of cutting them out and causing stress to the tree, and he would have gladly helped if I had asked. He said that tree is probably going to die, which means it is probably going to have to be removed, and said that a tree that large is going to cost thousands of dollars to take out. I told him that sounds ridiculously expensive. He said if the tree dies and he has to have it cut down, he's going to ask me to pay for some of it because of what I did to the roots. I told him good luck with that and that I'm not paying anything for his tree. He called me an asshole and told me the previous neighbors at least had the decency to ask for help when they didn't know what the hell they were doing instead of causing damage to other people's property. I told my wife about it and she thinks the guy is just being a jerk and agrees with me that taking a few roots from the top of the ground isn't going to hurt a tree that big. She also agrees that there is no way in hell we are going to pay for anything for this guy's tree. We were just making sure our yard is safe for our kids to play in. It's not our fault his tree grew roots into our yard. Sorry, but YTA. You probably didn't know this, but if you damage his tree by cutting the roots, you are liable for the tree if it dies. You definitely should have spoken to him before cutting the roots. We did a ton of work in our very old property. The trees in my neighbor's property close to our boundary died, possibly as a result of the work we did. Our family lawyer advised us to pay to have the trees removed. It wasn't contentious and we are friendly with the neighbors, but it was the right thing to do. Yes, it's your property, but you really should have at least talked to your neighbor first to come up with a solution. It does cost thousands of dollars to remove big trees. You had to know that ripping out roots would hurt the tree. YTA. 1. You could have covered the roots with more soil and sod seed. 2. Removing roots will at least make the tree sickly, if not outright killing it. I imagine the leaves are droopy on it now. I've done some work with tree health in one of my research jobs many moons ago, and generally, you can safely prune roots that are 3 to 5 times the diameter away from your tree. So, if your tree has a diameter of 3 feet, only cut tree roots 9 to 15 feet away from the tree. Info. How big is the tree? The diameter of the canopy. Info. How far away from the base of the tree were your cuts? If this tree is as large as you say, you probably killed the tree. Regardless, if the tree dies, you'll be paying for it. Edit. It looks like our boys in our tree law are on the case. https www.reddit.com/r/treelaw/comments/p5jszb/ here we go, boys, h96 dapv UTM, source equals share and UTM, medium equals web2x and context equals 3. Arborist here. You most likely killed the tree. Those surface roots are the most important. Your neighbor's estimate of the cost sounds accurate. YTA. Oof. You better look up tree law for your area, bub. It wasn't your tree and you probably killed it or seriously hurt it. Maybe teach your kids to be more careful instead? I learnt pretty young to watch where I'm running. YTA. YTA. You do realize you have also compromised the tree stability. Meaning in severe weather it has a greater risk of falling and causing damages. YTA. And just know that if the tree does die, you will be held responsible for it as you were the one who destroyed it. You admitted to not knowing what you were doing. You should have asked your neighbor before you decided to destroy his tree. Your excuse as to why isn't a good one either. Kids trip and hurt themselves all the time. Are you going to take away all the toys they can trip over? How about their bikes? They can really hurt themselves on those. Better get rid of those. Hopefully your neighbor isn't so happy. Info. How thick was the thickest root you cut? Approximately. Like 1 inch or more, like 3 or 6 inches. YTA. How would you like it if someone hacked something of yours apart without asking first? Clearly the actions and justifications of the entitled. I hope the tree dies and you end up paying for it. ETA. By your own admission you are clueless about the tree and how to care for a yard. Why didn't you ask for help instead of charging ahead like you did know? Okay, so it's your first non-apartment home. And you identified an issue with roots from your neighbor's tree. Why wasn't your first thought to knock on the neighbor's door and say, hey, bit of an issue with the roots from that tree. What can we do? As opposed to hacking a big chunk of root out in the assumption based, I take it, on no actual gardening knowledge, that it'd be fine? YTA. I'm afraid. Hope your daughter's wrist recovers well though. YTA. You should have told him what you were doing since it is his tree. Yes. Even though the roots were on your side of the fence. It's the neighborly thing to do. And speaking as someone with a fair amount of experience with plants. Depending on what kind of roots you hacked away, how many there were, and what you did to the open wounds before covering with dirt, there is a chance you could kill the tree. YTA. Why wouldn't you talk to your neighbor first? You admit you don't know what you're doing. It sounds like this guy would have worked with you to figure it out. You're going to live next to him for a long time. Consider apologizing and having him over for dinner. At least try to make friends with your neighbors. I wish there was an AITA purely for tree law. These threads are like crack. YTA for admitting you know nothing. Damaging a tree 'cause your kid fell. Like, are you going to just destroy everything that she trips over? What sense does this make? Then calling your neighbor an asshole for your bad choices. Take this as a very important and potentially expensive lesson op. As a new homeowner, if there is a topic you are clearly uneducated on, do your research first. If you keep this same mentality for other issues that pop up in your yard or home, There are far worse mistakes that could be made, and the consequences could be deadly for your family. Never before has mankind had such a volume of knowledge readily available to most people via the internet and free libraries. Use your resources and educate yourself. You better hope that tree doesn't die. My neighbor had an old sycamore that died when some city contractors dug up 1/4 of the roots and didn't seal them correctly. It cost the insurance company they had close to $100K to replace it and remove it. YTA. You may also be screwed financially. Look up tree law in your area. If that tree dies and the neighbor decides to come after you, it may be very expensive. Yeah, you're the asshole. Don't fuck with trees. It's just living there making your life better. Also, that's like you poisoning your neighbor's tree. They aren't going to be very appreciative, and it could have legal consequences. And come on, dude. Kids just get hurt sometimes when they are playing. Your daughter could have just as easily tripped on a ball or step or something. You going to put ramps in everywhere there's an elevation change to avoid that? This is classic overreaction. To be honest, I think you should have asked the neighbor first. You're not a tree surgeon, so you're not really qualified to know how robust a tree is to having its roots cut out. I would say if the tree dies, you should pay towards its removal. Although definitely look into how much that might cost, in case he is gouging. I hope your kid is okay. So, for me it's a soft YTA. Info. What kind of relationship do you want with your neighbors? If you don't care and you're happy to dislike each other, do nothing. If you want to attempt to have a good relationship, knock on their door and talk to him. Explain that it wasn't your intention to harm the tree. However, the roots needed to be removed and you can't afford to have someone else remove them, so you did it yourself. Explain that you also can't afford tree removal, and that you're hoping the tree pulls through. He may or may not accept your sort of apology, but at least you will have tried.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.